Hi everybody, this is Dave Gibbons and I'm answering the Wikia fan Q&A about the Kingsman Blu-ray release. What I'll do is I'll read your question and your name and then give my answer, and then we'll all know where we are. Question 1. What was your favourite scene in the movie? From Rowena Hassanali. I think it has to be the scene in the church where everybody dies. I just think it's the most over-the-top, incredible, action-packed, scary, relentless scene that I've seen in a very, very long time. And I think it really was a focus for everything that was going on in the plot of Kingsman. It really kind of focused the mind on exactly what would happen if we all indiscriminately turned on each other, and pretty good as well to see somebody as measured as Colin Firth's character just completely cut loose. So I think that was my favourite scene. Question 2. So many of your works have been adapted to other media. Do you ever consciously change your designs so they will be more adaptable? That was from Liam Kane. Yeah, I mean, I suppose there's Watchmen, which became a motion picture, and Kingsman, obviously, and other bits of design that I've done for games. You know, I think if you're designing for a specific media, then you do try to accommodate, the strengths of that medium. But really, if you're doing a comic, all you can really do is just do the best comic you can, and to make sure that it works best in those terms, because after all, that's where you're starting off, and there may or may not be a movie down the line. So I really just stick to what I see in my head, and if it has to be figured out later for a movie, then there are people in the movies who are very expert at doing that kind of thing. Question 3. When you were illustrating Watchmen, were there any details you put a lot of work into that nobody ever talks about? That was Billy Arrowsmith. Well, you know, Watchmen has been picked over a lot, and I think all the tiny details have been pulled out and all the connections have been, kind of raked over. I suppose the thing about it is that my main preoccupation was that all the pictures should be really clear and easy to read. You know, the problem is if you put a lot of detail in, you can sometimes lose the focus of a picture. It all becomes like kind of wallpaper or something. So I made sure that every single image in Watchmen was very strongly composed so that you looked exactly where I wanted you to look, and you immediately took in what was important about the picture. And of course, when you do work like that, it almost by definition conceals itself. If it's done well, you never notice it. If it's done badly, you do. So I think probably that was something that I put a lot of detailed effort into, and I've never really heard anybody talk about it. Question 4. We know there are sequel plans for the movie. Is there a sequel plan for the comic, and if so, what is it about? That's Madoki24. Well, I've heard that there may be sequel plans for the movie. I've certainly not heard anything definite myself, but the movie's done very, very well, so it would perhaps be surprising if there wasn't some more Kingsman material. As for the comic, Mark and I don't have anything planned at the moment. We may or may not do something in the future. It depends on our sort of schedules. Mark is very, very busy writing all sorts of things, and I've got a huge variety of work on as well. So if we come up with a really good idea, we may well do it. But as to whether it would be the same as the movie sequel, I'm not sure, because, things happen in a different way in the movie, and the things that are important in the movie aren't necessarily as important in the comic. I mean, we don't have the Kingsman organisation at all in the comic book, so if the sequel for the movie, if there was one, featured Kingsman, then that probably wouldn't be able to show up in the comic. But at the moment, nothing planned, but I'm sure you'll hear if we do decide to do it. Question 5. If you could have any of your other creations do a crossover with Kingsman, who would you choose? That's Tutcut 217. Well, obviously there's the whole Watchmen universe, but probably of the characters I've created, the one who's closest to my heart is Martha Washington, which was a series that Frank Miller and I did in the 90s and the early part of the 21st century. I really love her as a character, and she's kind of youthful as well, and it'd be really entertaining to see what would happen if her and Eggsy ever joined forces or ever came up against each other. I think they're both two very compelling characters. So that might be an interesting thing to see. Don't believe it will ever happen in a million years, but yeah, it's a fun idea, I think. Question 6, which scene in the movie do you think did the best job of adapting your work to live action? Jamie Harry. Wow, well, it's kind of difficult because, there are scenes in the comic that aren't even in the movie and vice versa. The thing with the car chase at the very beginning, although it goes in a slightly different way in the movie, that was like a little bit of the comic book coming to life. And I think some of the stuff actually, set in Eggsy's apartment with his mum and her horrible boyfriend had the same kind of feel. But I think, unlike Watchmen, where there are absolute set pieces where my view was exactly what was used on screen, I think Kingsman was a different kind of proposition. And I just think it's great that the film catches the same kind of humour and action and outlandishness that we went for in the comic book. It's more the general feeling, I think. Question 7, who do you think is the strongest comic book illustrator in the business? If every comic book illustrator got into a big fight, who do you think would win? A Wikia contributor. Well, I don't know who the strongest comic book illustrator is. If you mean physically strong, it's not the kind of occupation that tends to build big muscles, although I think of people like Greg Capullo and people like that who seem to work out, and I guess in terms of muscular strength, someone like that. Joe Jusko is somebody else I think of who's quite a muscular guy. So if that's the kind of strength you're talking about, it would have to be someone like that. And if there was a big fight, who do you think would win? Well, I think most of them would run away. And I don't know, it's a funny thing with fighters. It isn't necessarily always the big muscly guys you've got to watch out for. It's the quiet little guys who can really do the damage. So I wouldn't want to make any predictions about that. Anyway, those are all the answers. I hope that is of interest. And thanks very much for setting it up. Cheers. Bye.